Masterpieces are art where every component revolves around a thesis, a single tiny moral lesson that wraps everything up in a nice little bow. It wouldn't be overselling it to say that this single point is the purpose for the rest of the work's existence. The flashy hypotheticals and imagery are all nice, but if it doesn't boil down to some sort of theme, then it's not going to fare favorably in the audience's thumbs up, thumbs down binary. But how do you get all that info to point towards what could essentially be a single sentence? How do you deliver it subtly without avoiding the issue? And how nuanced can the lesson be before it comes across as indecisive? Are any games out there really good enough to be considered masterpieces? I think that, given my rough definition, there are plenty. Take for example, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. Don't laugh. You'd be excused for disregarding it at first as a Twitch-baiting shitpost where the player gets stormed by wacky controls and hilariously cruel consequences for failure, because it is exactly that. But I consider this game perfect because every detail serves a greater purpose. Every asset in the game, from the models to the music, is recycled from something else, and they're all thrown together to build a mountain of what the game calls trash. It's a metaphor for the internet. A bunch of art that's already served its purpose and is now just lying around. It uses this metaphor to dissect neo-Dadaism, or the practice of making low-effort, plainly accessible, sarcastically bad art, and how that's kinda defeatist. The game turns people away intentionally to make a point on how engaging with something frustrating can be more meaningful than something just anyone can consume and disregard in less than a minute, even if the game can be beaten just that fast by a master. Obfuscated, if I had to put it to a word. Not to mention, hard to comment on in a video essay on YouTube.com. One thing masterpieces do really well is that they get their message across and leave very little to be said. But why do they deliver all that in such a sneaky way? Another masterpiece I'm quite fond of is Devil May Cry. You've got all this stylish gameplay and a spunky hero, but what it all comes down to is that you can act tough and detached all day, but the mushy vulnerabilities are what really motivate you. It's certainly very goofy, very popcorn, and very much about the action, but it has a secret emotional core deep in there. However, brevity is the soul of wit. If short good and long bad, what's the point of all this extra baggage? The audience doesn't need to be conditioned for hours on end to get such a simple message across. DMC3 is a masterpiece game, but wouldn't it be mathematically better off as just, like, a tweet or something? What's the point of all the smoke and mirrors? What I don't think is that it's just some meaningless flash for the sake of awe, or some woefully esoteric, unsolvable mystery. If it were just a time killer, then people would see through it, and if only a few people could actually understand entertainment, then it wouldn't be so popular. The hidden message really isn't supposed to be all that secret. It's just supposed to require some critical thinking. It's literally just Inception, isn't it? If someone tells you what to think, it likely won't sink in. But with just a little effort on your end, you hit the thesis as if you came across it independently. Yet there's also this weird sense of fanaticism that comes with secret messaging. The first lesson of art analysis is to assume everything is intentional. That way you can get the media's actual message instead of just assuming it means what someone might want it to say. But if you follow that principle to its logical extreme, with the preconception that there's a secret meaning, you might end up running numerology calcs and throwing together ciphers that are just arbitrary and unintended. One primary objective when making art is to make the technicalities of the piece disappear, and leave only a pattern of stimuli, which get the point across. You'd want someone to pay attention to the details of each shot, but not necessarily those of the cuts between them. But video games also have this weird interactivity stuff, where you get more out if you put more in. The medium encourages people to analyze it even after the point gets across. How does the game stop the player from radically overthinking the point, while also totally hiding secrets just under their nose? Masterpiece number 3, Dark Souls, asks the player to choose between a beautiful lie and an ugly truth, and fleshes out both sides through replayability and sequence breaking. Your first run has you blindly following instructions with the promise of becoming king, but ends with you getting stabbed in the back and turned into a human sacrifice to keep the world alive. That's not a very happy ending, so the player is likely to go through the story again, this time more suspicious of who they're listening to, and eventually end up as royalty at the cost of the world. Now knowing everything, they need to pick between saving the world as a fool, or ruling over it as the smartest man on the cinder. People finish this game with different interpretations of which ending is the quote-unquote good one. But even though the player is given no happily ever after, there's a sense of closure, since each side of the issue is explored. Compare that to a game like Shadow of the Colossus, where people passionately yet fruitlessly picked apart the overworld for years, and you'll see that while both are melancholy masterpieces, Shadow could have used a hidden bombshell to get stick-to-itive fans a nice out. Its emptiness fits its tone, but leaves intrepid fans looking for some sort of colossal white whale. Obvious messaging doesn't resonate with people, but that doesn't denote that a hidden meaning has to be a secret one. I have a hidden message in this very video. The cipher is the first word of every paragraph. But just because I told you it exists doesn't make it any less impactful of a thesis. Masterpieces revolve around a singular message or question which is obfuscated enough to require engagement, but obvious enough to catch the audience's attention. And while it's fun to get the player digging for answers, it's also important to leave them with a sense of closure, or else they'll end up manic and broken. My point is that the point of obfuscating the point is to make a point about your point, because the point of even having a point is to point fans towards more pointed thinking.